This is a Coronet film. It's a story about him, the helpful little fireman. Once there was a little fireman, and he did important little jobs. He knew that little jobs are big helps. No one worked harder than he did to keep everything in his fire station shiny and clean.
Fire, low, 45,
But when the fire alarm sounded and the fire engines raced to the fire, the helpful little fireman always stayed behind. He was too little to do the big work that firemen are supposed to do, so he just did his little jobs. When the fireman rolled up the big hoses, the little fireman rolled up the little hoses. When it was cleanup time and the fireman did the big job of mopping the bunk room, the little fireman did the little job of wringing out the mops. Every fireman has to do his share of cleaning. But firemen also have to go to school. The fire chief was their teacher. And so the helpful little fireman went to fireman school. He learned about fires in houses and how to put them out. He wanted to learn all he could. And after the chief taught the firemen something, he would ask them questions. The helpful little fireman always knew the answers. The chief was pleased. When there were papers to turn in, it was the helpful little fireman's job to collect them. That was another little job that was a big help. When they studied first aid and the other firemen practiced making big bandages, the helpful little fireman practiced making little ones. And whenever any visitors came to the fire station, the helpful little fireman showed them the things that firemen do. The little fireman let the other firemen carry him down ladders to practice rescuing people. He was brave. The chief knew that a fireman has to be brave. The little fireman learned how to do all the things the other firemen did. The chief knew that the little fireman was doing the best he could to be a good fireman, even though it was hard work sometimes. Perhaps the chief also knew the little fireman's secret wish, to go to a fire like the other firemen. Perhaps that was why at dinner time a few days later, while the helpful little fireman ate with all the other firemen, and the chief seemed to talk with them as usual, he really could hardly keep from smiling, for he had decided that the next time the firemen went to a fire, someone who was little but brave and helpful would go along. That night, the little fireman dropped his trousers onto his boots as usual and went to bed as usual to dream about his secret wish. But now the chief had a secret too. That night, not far away from the fire station, a fire had started and someone called for help. The little fireman got up with the other firemen. He always did that when the alarm sounded at night, even though he knew he wouldn't go with them to the fire. And as usual, when the last fire truck had pulled away, the helpful little fireman was left behind. That's what usually happened, but not this time. The chief told the little fireman what to do. But when he tried to turn on the water at the hydrant, it was too big a job. He needed help. And when he climbed up a ladder, a fireman had to rescue him because he got stuck at the top. That was too big a job, too. And when he tried to help the other fireman with a hose, he couldn't keep up with them. He was too small. He couldn't help fight the fire. He just got in the way. And there weren't any little jobs for him to do. But what was that? A little leak in the hose. But little leaks become big leaks, and firemen can't fight a fire if their hose has a big leak. Someone should know about this, but everyone was so busy fighting the fire. Was this a job the little fireman was big enough to do himself? Yes, he could stop the leak. It was just a little job, but little jobs are big helps. The little fireman knew the little job he had to do. It was morning before the fire was out. The firemen were cleaning up as they always do after a fire. And what did the firemen find? They found the little fireman asleep, still holding tight to the hose. But when the chief moved his hand from the hose, they all saw the leak that the little fireman had covered. The chief knew what the little fireman had done. So did the other fireman. His little job had been a big help. He had saved the day. Hooray for the helpful little fireman. And soon after that, the city had a big parade to honor a special hero. Firemen and fire engines were in the parade. The chief was in the parade, and you know who the hero was. Everyone had come to see him. the helpful little fireman, for this was his parade. It was a parade to remind everyone that little jobs are big helps. And the helpful little fireman was going to keep doing his little jobs until he was big enough to do the big ones.